Chaldean Grammar, Chapter 11. Just focusing on verbs, and specifically there's two types of verbs that we're going to look at, those that end in a resh or a nun, and then we're going to take a special look at the verb azil, which is to go, which is very irregular and kind of deserves its own treatment. So third resh or nun. So again, the third radical, the third of the three root letters, being a resh or a nun, it's going to cause some irregularities. Let's take a look. Those verbs that end in resh or nun exhibit an irregularity, but one that is consistent. When this final root letter is next to a lemad in the conjugation, that third root letter is pronounced, but the lemad is not. The letter swallows the lemad because of the similarity of sounds. Similarly, the short I vowel, the short I vowel beneath the second root letter is changed to a long E vowel. The progression will be as follows. Okay, so that's words, but let me explain what that means. When there's a resh as the third radical, like in this verb zmara, zmar means to sing. How would you say I sang? Zmar li, zmarli, zmarli. So qtal li, with li, zmar li. Now there are dialects of Aramaic speakers that say zmarli. It is a perfectly legitimate, okay, correct way to say I sang. However, many Chaldean villages, especially if you're going to want to try to recognize as many as you can, what happens is the resh and lemad, they're close sounds in the way that the mouth is shaped when it makes them. So the resh sort of swallows the lemad. So zmerli becomes zmerri, and then the vowel is lengthened and it becomes zmeri. Zmerli, zmerri, zmeri, and this is the final product. This is the way many Chaldeans pronounce I sang, zmeri. So this vowel is lengthened, the lemeth is silenced. So I'm just going to give you this kind of new form. So the present and future tenses are regular. So I'm not going to give you the present tense and the future tense of to sing because it's perfectly fine. Gzamrin, gzamrit, gzam, and so on. So there's no irregularity. It's only the past tense with its type B endings that's affected. Why? Because only the type B endings use a lemeth. So here's the conjugation in the past tense. Zmeri, zmeruch, zmerach, zmere, zmera, zmeran, zmerochun, zmere. So now what happens if you were to make a past perfect, if you want to say, I had sung, and you want to put the wa in there, what happens when you put the wa in the middle, where it's supposed to be? It separates the resh from the lemeth, and so the conjugation becomes regular again. Zmerwali, zmerwaluch, zmerwale. It becomes totally normal, just like every other verb. Now, again, I'm going to kind of push this point. If zmeri, if the lemeth isn't pronounced, why are we writing it? Because we don't want to make the language stupid. Zmeri, okay, the lemeth isn't pronounced, but when we make it the past perfect, when we say zmerwali, what did the lemeth just pop out of nowhere? No, the lemeth is a past tense indicator. We want to write it even if we're not pronouncing it, so that when we conjugate further and say something like zmerwali, we'll recognize it. Or when we compare it to other verbs, withli has a lemeth there. Zmeri, what is zmara? Just like it has its own verbal system? No, it's the exact same verbal system. We want to show that, but we want to make that lemma silent. So that's why we're writing it not just phonetically. This applies to every verb with a resh as its third radical. So the word for speak, to say something, is amar. It's Mary. So again, the resh eats the lemad. So it's alep mim resh is how you say it, to speak or to say. So it's Mary, Meruch, Merach, and so on. It has the same irregularity. Every third resh root is going to act like this. This is the only irregularity, though. Everything else is normal. The present and future is fine, and even the past perfect is fine because you're separating the resh and lemad. Something similar happens to roots that end in a nun except the vowel remains short and the noon is doubled in its pronunciation. So what happens here? Third noon, here's the past tense. It's zwinli. Zwinli. Again, n and l, those two sounds are so close that many people, again, you can say zwinli, it's fine, zwinluch, zwinlach, but many Chaldeans are going to hear them say zwinni. So the noon, first of all, is absorbing the lamad, and the lamad becomes silent. Now, what happens with the resh is this vowel is lengthened. The becomes an e. In the case of a noon, it doesn't. So it's zwinni. What happens instead of the lengthening of the vowel? The noon sound is doubled, as you'd expect with this vowel anyway. So it's zwinni, zwinnuch, zwinnach, zwinne, zwinna, zwinnan, zwinnochen, zwinne. This is the only irregularity. Every other tense is perfectly normal, including zwinwali. The lameth comes back, everything is normal. Zwinwali, zwinwaluch, zwinwale. And again, every verb with the noon as the third radical is going to follow this pattern right here. Let's talk about this verb to go. The root for to go is alap zain lameth, azil. It is the most irregular verb in Chaldean because as a first alap, as an initial alap, as the first radical letter, first root, and it has a lemeth at the end, and the lemeth does some weird stuff, as we'll see in a second. The first irregularity is that it uses type B endings in the present and future tenses as well as the past. So this verb, in many dialects of Chaldean, only uses type B endings. This is very, very irregular. To use a type B ending in the present and the future, we're expecting type A endings. So here is how many Chaldean villages would say to go in the present tense. Kizali. So this is very irregular. This k, this vowel on the kap, you wouldn't expect it. Kizali, kizaluch, kizalach, kizale, kizala, kizalan, kizalochon, kizale. If you want the subjunctive, you just say zali, zaluch, zalach, zale, zala, zalan, zalochon, zale. Oh, it's here. So I have this here. Zali, zaluch, zalach, zale, zala, zalan, zalochon, zale. Very irregular. These are not the endings we would expect for the subjunctive or the present tense or the future. Bidzali, bidzaluch, bidzalach, bidzale, bidzala, bidzalan, bidzalochon, bidzale. Again, this is not what we would expect. These are the endings that we would expect for the past tense. They're used for the future, the subjunctive, and the present. I will add something, however, right here, right now. All of these conjugations have an alternate. There is another way to pronounce these, and some villages simply don't do this. And they will say, they will use the type A endings, and they will adjust the root. And they'll insert a yoth in between the zain and the lemad. So they'll say zilen, zilet, zilat, zile, zila, ziluch, zilotun, zili. And we're going to talk about that. Actually, I think it might be later in this chapter. No, it's in a later chapter that I'm going to discuss that a little more. Just be aware that there are some Chaldeans that do not pronounce these exactly in this way. We'll talk about that, I guess, in a later chapter. Okay. We talked about the subjunctive. Here's the future. The present perfect. Kazawali. Kazawaluch. Kazawalach. Kazawale. Kazawala. Kazawalan. Kazawalochon. Kazawale. Same thing with the future perfect. Past tense, now we're back to normal with type B endings. Zilli, I went. Zilluch, zillach, zille, zilla, zillan, zillochen, zille. Past perfect, zilwali, as you would expect. This is back to normal. Zilwaluch, zilwalach, zilwale, zilwala, zilwalan, zilwalochen, zilwale. Oh, it is in this chapter. Okay, sorry. The thing I said earlier is in this chapter, so we'll talk about it in a second. Here's the imperative of to go. It's very irregular. See, to tell a single, if you want to tell one man or a boy, go, you say see. If you're speaking to a female, se. And if you're speaking to a group, so. This is simply just irregular imperative. Just learn this as if it's a new vocab word. And then here's the infinitive, izala. So if you want to use it in that construction you learned last chapter, iwin bizala, iwit bizala, and so on. Here is a form of the verb to go that's used as a helper verb. A helper verb is a verb that helps another verb. And this is a way to speak in another future tense. This is another way to use the future tense. Not bid. This is another way to make a future tense. In English, we have different ways to make it a future tense. We say, I will eat. I will eat is the future tense of to eat. However, in English, we also have an alternate future tense. I am going to eat. So this verb here, going, in English, is called a helper verb. Going to eat is another way to say the future tense. So it's not I will eat, I am going to eat. It's very remarkable, I meant this word, it's remarkable that the exact same verb is used in the exact same way in Chaldean. But here's the form that it uses. So I'm going to talk about the form first, and then we're going to talk about how this is used as a future tense indicator. So here is this new form from the verb azil. It's a different form. It's where, as I said earlier, a few minutes ago, you insert a yod between the zain and the lemad, and here's the conjugation. It's pretty regular to its type of endings. Zilen, zilan, zilet, zilat, zile, zila, ziluch, zilotun, zili. What I wanted to say earlier, a little bit before that, about to go, let me just scroll back up here and just make this note in passing, but it is important. You will see villages saying kizin, kizit, kizet to mean I go. Just in the present tense. That's really the place where you're going to find that. But where was I now? When we go back here, this is not the same. This is not kizin. This is zilen. I am going, zilen, zilen, and so on. Now, this is the conjugation. This is just I am going, and so on. It's just treat this as kind of its own verb. However, whereas in English, the helper verb takes the infinitive. So when you want to use this in English to make a future tense, you say I am going, and then you use the infinitive to eat. In Chaldean, the helper verb takes the subjunctive, as in the following examples. Note that the subjunctive verb is conjugated as well according to person, number, and gender. So, I am going to eat. Zielen, achlen. So you're taking this verb right here, I am going, and then instead of saying to eat, you're saying I am going, let me eat. It's using the subjunctive. Zielen, achlen. He is going to take. Zile, shaqal. So look at what you're doing. You're conjugating both. Zile, so he is going. Shaqal, let him take. Let him take. He is going, let him take. Zile, shaqal. Both of these have to be conjugated and they have to match. Zili, qatli. They are going to kill. Zile, zale. He is going to go. This is the most kind of formal way to use this verb. You can do this, combine it with any verb, and you have another way to say a future tense. Just like in English, you have the word going and you have the word will. I will eat. I am going to eat. Two different ways to say more or less the same thing. Same thing in Chaldean. Now, what you may have heard if you've spoken to Chaldeans is not this fully conjugated zilin, zilan, zilat, zilat. There's a way to contract it in a shortened form of this helper verb, and you will hear in casual conversation, not zilin achlin, you'll hear sometimes zi achlin, zi shaqal, zi qatli, zi zale. And so instead of, and this is a nice kind of simpler way to say it, zi I am going to eat, zi achlin, zi shaqal, zi qatli. I find it a little bit kind of casual. It's not the most formal way to speak, but it's quite common. You'll hear it all the time. In fact, while I'm here, you will also hear some villages, instead of saying zi achlin, they will turn this into a deleth, because zain and deleth are related sounds. And you'll hear some villages say di achlin, di shaqal, di qatli, di zale. All legitimate, like I said, like I've been saying all along, it's not that one is correct or incorrect or right or wrong, just different variations within the different kind of accents and dialects of Chaldean. Okay. So it's kind of a lot, but it's a new way to sort of say the future tense. There was a lot in this chapter, so maybe this one you can split into a couple different lessons as well if it was kind of overwhelming to you. Let's take a look at these verbs. Azal izala, to go. Achal ichala, to eat. Amar imara, to say or tell. Batan ptana, to conceive, like to, become pregnant. Baqar baqore, to ask. Gawar guara, to marry. If you're looking closely, you can probably guess this is related to the word for man. And this is also the word for husband, gora. Okay, so those are related concepts. Zawin, zuana. So you have that final noon. It's going to follow the rules that we talked about. Zamr, zmara. Zaqar, zqara. Zqara is weaving. Khadr, ghdara. Khadr, ghdara is to travel, or more precisely, to kind of go around in circles, to encircle something. The word hadra, the hadra is actually this book of prayers, but the word hadra comes from, it means a cycle, sort of the cycle of the year going around. Then there's another word that sounds very similar, hadr, hadara. This has an Arabic root, but it means you're attending something. So hadr or ghadara is to travel or encircle. Hadr, with this kind of deeper guttural sound, hadara is to attend. Tamar tmara is to bury something. Ta'an ta'ana is to carry. Yaqid iqada, to make heavy. That's a typo. To make heavy, not to make heave. That's a different thing. Kapan kpana. Again, you have that final noon, so be careful with that. To hunger, kapan. Natar is to guard. You have your final resh. It's going to follow the same rules. Abar abara, to pass. This could also be awar awara, but it's usually abara. Amr amara, to dwell. Hashir pshara, to melt. Qatar qtara, to tie or to wreathe. Shachar shkhara, to snore. Shakir shkara is to thank. This is another Arabic root, but it's pretty much incorporated into the Chaldean language. Shapar shpara, to please someone. It's related to the word shapira, which means beautiful. Taur twara, to break. Lots of nouns here. Alahutha is divinity. Bukhra is the firstborn, so the firstborn of this mother or whatever. Bora is a fool. Gezila is when you're feeling sorry for somebody, you want to call him gezile, call her gezila. Gchka is laughter. The root of this is gachak. I think we saw that earlier. Duha is sacrifice. Zdotha is fear. Zumara is a song or a chant. By the way, I think you're probably picking up you're already starting to connect when nouns and verbs are related. So we already saw zmara is to sing, zumara is a song. Zade is to fear, zdotha is fear. Gachik is to laugh, gichka is laughter. Start paying attention to this stuff. Qima is value. So something valuable is mar qima. So like valuable, value. It literally means Lord, but don't worry about the mar part. Mar qima is valuable. Yarotha is an heir, like in a will. Yatuma is an orphan. Kisa is a bag. Lushana or lishana are different ways to pronounce tongue, like the organ, or language. Lele is night. Mrusha is magi, like the guys that went and visited Jesus when he was a baby or a child. Medinha is east. Mucha is brain. Mazmora is a psalm. So look at this, this is interesting. Zamar is to sing. Zumara is a song. Mazmora is a psalm, like one of the little hymns in the Bible. Malpana is teacher. Nimra is tiger. Na'ame is grace. This probably is related to a very old Akkadian word. Pera is fruit. Patha is face. Hocha is wind. It can also sort of mean breath. Pare is money. I think it's kind of a collective plural. It looks plural. Pare. Soma is fast or Lent. Qutla is murder. A lot of vocab here. Chinna is other, another. Gushmaya is concrete, so this concrete thing as opposed to some abstract thing. Hanana is merciful. Yaqira is honored. Nachopa is a shy person or a modest person. Aziza is beloved. Aloya is high. Pelgaya is middle. Plima is crooked. Shhiqa is vexed. Twira is broken. So we had earlier. Tower is to break. Twira is broken. In a few chapters, we'll learn how to make these out of verbs, these adjectives out of verbs. Exercises, conjugate, write some phrases, translate, compose. Good luck. Next time, 4-letter roots. I said most of them are 3, but some are 4, and then we'll get into some other irregular verbs. See you then.